Okay, so this video is about acid reflux, which is very common these days. So symptoms of acid reflux, also commonly referred to as GERD, so gastroesophageal reflux disease. So persistent heartburn, pressure in your throat, throat pain, dry cough, raspy voice. That tends to happen after years of it occurring. Headaches, migraines, lockjaw or like clenching at night, bad breath. Also that feeling of like fullness, like bloatedness, fullness in like your upper stomach area, like right after a meal and even before the next meal. So when you feel like you haven't even fully digested your last meal, when you're about to eat your next meal, but you're still hungry. So something's going on there. So what generally happens when people have acid reflux or heartburn and it's become an issue, or if it's affecting their sleeping or whatever, they'll go to the doctor and the doctor will normally prescribe them a prescription for, most of the time it's a proton pump inhibitor, so, or a PPI. There's many of them. Some common ones are like Pantaloc. That's the one that I've most commonly seen. So what that's doing is the proton pump inhibitor. So in our stomach, there's proton pumps that are secreting stomach acid for our digestion. So when we take a proton pump inhibitor, we are inhibiting those from creating stomach acid. And generally you're supposed to take that before your meal. So what happens when you do that though, is you don't produce stomach acid at all. So your stomach, or sorry, the food that you eat doesn't have the opportunity to properly digest. So in our stomach, we need a proper pH to activate enzymes to trigger certain vitamins and minerals to convert into an active form. And then once things have been digesting for a certain amount of time, right? Like we also need enough acidity for certain things to break down. Once we've had it's broken down to a certain amount, it will have changed to the proper pH, and that will trigger the next sequence of events in our small intestine. So that will trigger bile to release into our small intestine, certain buffering liquids into our small intestine to allow the digestive process to continue. So what happens is if we don't reach the proper pH in our stomach, that next sequence of events does not get triggered to occur. So that means if that food moves on, it now doesn't have the proper environment to digest. So what continues to happen is we don't properly digest our food, and food just kind of moves through our system, not properly digested, and therefore we won't be gaining the appropriate nutrients that we need, and it can also irritate our intestines. So that can tend to create a lot more mucus buildup. It can trigger more gas, and it will create certain bacteria to overgrow because they will start to grow in the environment that the proper bacteria will not have to grow. So just right off the bat, before we even get into further things like that, here are some solutions if you do get acid reflux at home. So maybe you just ate something wrong or whatever, or this is something that you get frequently. So first things first is breathing. Like, I know it sounds like so like typical, like, oh, deep breaths, but no, for real, like whatever just happened, you need to move it through. So you need to stimulate enough activity in the body to move the food through to create the digestive fire to move things through. So try to massage the stomach with oils. That can help. So you can use things like coconut oil, castor oil, which is really detoxifying, almond oil. You can take probiotics, you can take enzymes. So if this is something that occurs frequently with you, I would recommend going to your health food store and buying some digestive enzymes, so that you'll take right at the beginning of your meal, and it will provide you with enzymes that will digest proteins, fats, carbohydrates. Normally it will have some papaya enzymes or pineapple enzymes. You can also take a little bit of apple cider vinegar before a meal. You can take some magnesium like later, like if you're struggling with acid reflux in the evening and you're trying to sleep, you can take some magnesium. If your gut seems to be inflamed, you can go to a health food store and you can buy something called slippery elm. That's something, it's a mucilage bark. So when you mix it with water, it turns kind of slimy, and that will coat the inside of your intestines and help heal. Walking before a meal, walking like 15 minutes after a meal helps. So natural antacids for if you're struggling afterwards too are fennel seeds. So you can chew on those after a meal. They kind of taste like licorice too, so it's kind of nice. Okay, so what causes acid reflux? So eating too close to bed, eating too large of a meal, overeating, that tends to be something that we commonly do in our culture. Laying down too far after, or sorry, too close after eating. So what happens is the way your stomach is situated, when you lay down, it actually tilts the contents of the stomach, right? Because of gravity. So your stomach is full, right? Just like a cup, right? If your stomach's full of food, and then if I put a cap on this and I tilted it sideways, all the contents of the food are going to push up against, and right here, there's a valve. So it's a one-way valve, but if you put pressure on that valve, eventually it's going to break through. And then there's also foods that are going to be triggering acid reflux. So what tends to happen when we are consistently getting acid reflux, we tend to reach for simpler foods because foods aren't digesting properly, especially when we start to take medication for it. So if our foods are no longer digesting in our stomach, we're only going to be getting the simple to digest foods. So that tends to be the sugars. Carbohydrates are easiest foods to digest. So we tend to reach for things that are simpler to digest. And unfortunately, those are actually the foods that kind of cause this gassy, fermented state to begin with. And that's like white sugar, white flour. So what happens commonly with acid reflux, gassing, bloating, things like that, is food goes into the stomach. And if there's foods that take much longer to digest, so one of the things right off the bat is damaged fat. Damaged fat just kind of doesn't even get digested in the body really very well. It's not a source of nutrients to us. And damaged fat, there's a post on my website, I'll link it below. So that's things like processed commercialized oils and fats. So that's like canola oil, safflower oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, margarines, shortenings, palm oil, soybean oil, what's the other one? Cottonseed oil. These oils are produced on mass scale. They're produced in factories. They're on conveyor belts. They're stored in clear bottles. All the things that would cause oil to go rancid, these things have been subjected to. And they're deodorized, they're bleached, they're all these things to prevent us from actually realizing that they're rancid. So when we eat these things, so they're commonly in, our shelf salad dressings. When we go to restaurants, all these restaurants use these oils because they're the cheapest. So when we go to restaurants, they'll be in the salad dressings there. They'll be in our fried food. So when you go to takeout places and you get French fries, or unfortunately they're so good, but that's damaged fat. What else? It will be in like mayos, chips. Another why it's so good. So like potato chips, a lot of the condiments that we'll buy in sauces, and then our packaged foods. So when you go into the grocery store and you buy like simple things like crackers or the baked goods sections, or granola bars, even cereals, a lot of those, sometimes it's because a lot of those are lower fat, they'll have a lot less in proportion, but it's all these oils. So when we start to eat a giant meal filled with these oils, so let's just say you prepare something at home and it's fried rice, and you prepare it with canola oil, and then you have spicy mayo on the side, or these things just sit in your stomach and they take a long time to digest. And then if you eat simple foods like sugars, so you eat something sweet, or even a piece of fruit at that point, these things will digest quickly. And then they sit there in your stomach because the pH is not the proper pH to move on, and so it will ferment. And so that fermentation, we know this fermented. I was just going to point to something that's something else. Fermented things tend to be sour. They tend to be tangy. They tend to be acidic. So a lot of the times that fermentation, that acid reflux that is coming up, it's not too much stomach acid. It's actually the fermentation acid. So the acid caused from food sitting in your stomach for too long, or the wrong types of food remaining, like lingering later in your stomach. So when we tend to say, you know, when we feel like the actual pH of our stomach can kind of be lingering just based off of the types of foods that we ate. So the less fresh food we eat, the less raw food we eat, the less fruits and vegetables that we eat, the actual you know, residue almost left in our stomach is like this acidy, like remains, right? So that, and from there we tend to not absorb as many as our nutrients. So there's certain nutrients that the stomach cells need to produce enough acid, and one of them is zinc, and that's one of the common most common deficiencies in all humans. And zinc is actually what you need to produce stomach acid, and most people are deficient in zinc. So there's about 5% of the people diagnosed with acid reflux that actually have overactive acid production. The rest of those people, they have underactive acid. So they don't have enough acid produced that things ferment, and that's the acid that comes up. Or they have a toxic stomach lining, and that's the acid that's coming up. So it's not your body actually producing too much acid. That's very uncommon. It's or less common, I should say. So what happens is when you are actually not producing enough stomach acid, and then you end up taking these medications that prevent even further acid production, the solution will never be solved. So we really have to take care of our diet when we're suffering from acid reflux. We really have to try to get fresh foods in there, more alkaline foods, things that will clean the lining. So you need to think of it as if you had like, if there was like, I can't use this example, but like, let's just say this surface had like some grime on it and you had to clean it. What foods would you use to clean the grime off of this? You would be using, you know, crisp, dried, hydrating things to try to wipe the grime off of there. You wouldn't choose like milk or, you know, syrup or like, you know, processed foods, right? Because it would leave another residue. You need things that will not leave a residue. So it's the same thing on your inside. So common foods that cause fermentation in the stomach are things that have been pasteurized. So therefore they're not living anymore. So this could be pasteurized juices, pasteurized sauces, soups, tomato products, simple sugars like white sugars, syrups, processed sugars, alcohol, because alcohol kind of sterilizes things and it really upsets the pH. Commercialized sauces, dressings, dips. And then there's also activities that can impact that little valve, that sphincter, to open and let things move through. So that can be things like smoking, like nicotine in general, caffeine, too much activity right after or before. Obviously it's a little bit different for athletes because their bodies are a lot functioning a lot higher, but moving too quickly after eating. Alcohol, peppermint and spearmint actually as well. So peppermint and spearmint are actually kind of not the best idea if you're dealing with acid reflux. So what I'm reading here is my post on my website, which I will link below, which is called What Acid Reflux, Why Does It Happen? So the three main things to focus on when you're trying to prevent acid reflux is your body's pH, so the pH of the food that you're eating, enzymes, so the amount of enzymes that your body's receiving from the foods that you're eating, and mineral concentration, so the amount of minerals that you're allowing your body to have access to. So that means that it's really important to eat whole foods that have been grown from the earth and nutritious earth, and that still contain those minerals. So when we process foods, we take minerals out, we take vitamins out because we want to preserve them. So it's important to consume foods that have those nutrients still in there, so we're not deficient. So here are some causes of decreased stomach acid. So we could say that decreased stomach acid could be the starting causes of acid reflux. So zinc deficiency, just because it's just such a common deficiency and it's tends to be processed out of our food. Lack of fresh and living foods, a bacterial imbalance, lack of that bitter taste, because bitter stimulates our digestive processes. Lack of sour taste. Sour also helps that digestive process, and sour foods tend to be balancing in our pH. The overconsumption of sweet foods, and which is processed sweet foods. So it's different than saying like the overconsumption of fruit, or even to like using natural sugars like dates, and even higher mineral sugars like coconut sugar and molasses and things like that. Still, obviously that doesn't want to be the bulk of your diet, but that's less so than the processed sugars. Lack of sodium or reduced sodium diet. So that's different though, not table salt. Table salt only contains 2 minerals. It's a high mineral salt. So that would be a quality rock salt or a quality sea salt. Overchlorinated water. So maybe get your water tested at home just to see the quality of the water. You can see how much fluoride's in it. You can see if there's some, what's it called, lead. Not waiting long enough in between meals, overeating, and then consuming too many of the over-counter medications like Tums, Gaviscon, and even the proton pump inhibitors. So some tips to boost the digestive juices are to adjust the stress levels, redefine your meal times. So try to work up an appetite in between your meals. Know your meal times. Try not to snack in between. At the beginning, this may be hard because if your meals are not balanced enough, you're going to feel weak in between them because you're not going to be getting enough nutrients. But if you work up a big enough appetite and you learn and you educate yourself enough on how to build a balanced meal, you'll be able to consume enough nutrients to last you to the next meal. And that way your body will have enough time to actually digest in between the meals. To stimulate your digestion, so eat some bitter foods maybe before your meal, or purchase bitters from a health food store. Certain bitter teas would be dandelion, chicory, and coffee for people who drink coffee, but try to limit your coffee intake to maybe once a day. Eat fermented foods, apple cider vinegar. If you're going to snack in between meals, choose fruit or raw vegetables, or fresh fruit juices, fresh fruit and vegetable juices, the ones that have not been pasteurized. Incorporate abdominal workouts. So our entire digestive process is muscles. So that means our intestines are muscles, right? They're working to move things through. So if we have really weak abdominal muscles, we never do ab workouts, our digestion is going to be poor. So, practice some planks, do it old school, do some sit-ups in the evening. Try intermittent fasting. So that's when you take longer periods without food. So, it can be anywhere from 6 to 24 hours between a meal. Increase your hydration, find a way to do that. So certain supplements that you could take to help your digestion will be enzymes and probiotics, zinc supplements, pineapple, which is bromelain, which you'd find at health food store, and deglycerinized licorice root, which is really effective too in keeping your blood sugar and blood pressure up if you're trying to increase the space in between your meal times. And then these specific foods can help balance the pHs in your stomach. Fresh carrot and cabbage juices. Cabbage juices are also really good on balancing the bacteria balance if there was ever like an overgrowth or hernias or things. What am I saying? Sorry, my post, I haven't fully edited this post, so that's why I'm kind of skipping through this. Fresh sprouts, so you can make those at home, or you can buy alfalfa sprouts from the grocery store. Fresh lemon, lime, apple cider vinegar, quality oils and fats. So, you know, avocado, grass-fed butter, ginger root, making fresh ginger root tea. That's awesome. Use herbs and spices in cooking. Grow some in your backyard. Purchase it fresh. Buy quality dried ones if you do. And yeah, I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, but I'll link the post below. And from there will also be some posts that you can click on. So a post on bacteria and probiotics, and yeah, peace.